Hey guys, welcome back to Once Upon a Movie. Today's a very different episode than what I normally do. I have with me three fine gentlemen that are going to be discussing the film Longlegs. Now, if you haven't seen Longlegs, probably not the best episode to watch because this is going to be spoiler heavy. We are going to be talking about what we loved and also what we hated from the movie. So, with that being said, let's meet our panel. We got Dan, Real Takes.
Hey everybody, happy to be here. Exciting movie, interesting movie. Looking forward to talking about it with these guys.
Right. And we also have OTS joining us from Tennessee, right?
Yeah, Nashville. Nashville.
There
OTS movies, but I'm Steven, by the way. I am very interested to participate in this discussion. It's a different movie to talk about, so it's gonna be cool.
Absolutely. And last but not least, we have a late entry, Jesse, over in California.
Yeah, Palm Springs.
So aside from Jesse and Steven, I think you guys are on the love it side. And I've seen some of your videos, Jesse, and you're praising the movie. Steven, you saw it twice.
I did.
And I believe everybody else here just saw it one time. So I think first and foremost, I mean, let's just talk about all the good that Longlegs has to offer. Steven, if you want to go ahead maybe and start it off.
So I did see it twice, and the experience is very unique because when I saw it the first time, I came out of it and I gave it a 5 out of 5. And I knew that I needed to see it again because not only was the movie great, but I had a banger of an experience with my audience because the audience was sold out and everyone was locked in. And when you have that experience, it does sort of taint your critical thinking because it's just a really good experience. When the way this movie creeps up on you works for an entire room, that's an experience that you don't forget. So I went back a second time, and the audience was more like about a fourth of the theater, is very small. And weirdly, my appreciation for the movie went up, but my score dropped slightly. I still give it a 4.5, but I did ding it a half a point because I started to sort of, outside of that experience, started to be able to put the critical glasses on and start to really analyze the movie a little bit more. And it's still great. It's still great. But that's not usually how it works. You know, you don't usually have a situation where your score goes down, but your appreciation goes up. So, and that says a lot about the movie to me.
I definitely feel the same way about going into it. Like, I walked out with immediate, 5 out of 5. I thought it was great. With the marketing, I did kind of drop my score because going into it, you're expecting this kind of life-changing, what's going to happen, not really expect it. So when I walked out, I wasn't disappointed. I was just like, oh, I didn't see it going down that route. So it still gave me a really good feeling after it was done. But seeing all the critiques of mixed reviews and stuff, being like, oh, it wasn't 100 or it wasn't traumatizing as it was supposed to be. I liked it for just the face value of what it was. It wasn't a typical bunch of gore, bunch of slashing. It was just this in-depth story that you kind of just I gravitated towards. I really liked it. So I like those kind of movies. So it was just high up there the entire time. And then when it ended, I'm like, I kind of like those. It just didn't finish. It kind of left it open. So I appreciated that kind of the style of it. I just loved it.
So I feel like I have a couple different perspectives, or a couple different caveats in terms of my perspective. I'm a huge Nicolas Cage fan. He's, if not my favorite actor, one of my favorites. I think my level of excitement at seeing him involved in this definitely kind of elevated the entire experience for me. I think some of the critiques I'm seeing, some people out there just are not a big fan of his, which I get. I feel like if you're not stylistically in tune with him, then you're just not. And when he's going bigger in something like this, there's a chance it could turn you off or you can find it comical. I found most of what he did funny, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I enjoyed the experience of watching the movie. And I'll keep this, I guess, a little more positive to start. He really brought it up for me. I think if Nick had not been involved with this and it was somebody else who maybe didn't go as big, it really would have dropped for me, honestly. I just watched The Black Coat's Daughter because I wanted to get a sense for what Oz Perkins kind of is doing. I had watched Gretel and Hansel a while back. I don't love either of those movies. But I think when you're watching this, you see he has a very particular style and a very particular way of going about his process. And I've been trying to read up a lot and listen to a lot of what he's had to say about his mindset going into this. All in all, though, I think this movie got hurt by the comparisons. I understand why they exist because And being a content creator, I think we feel like we know you kind of need that hook sometimes to say, oh, it's, give someone something to equate it to in their mind to sell. But like, you don't always have to do that. And I think it hurt the movie.
Can I
Frankly.
say something that's kind of to piggyback on that maybe would get me a little bit of hate, but it's just how I feel. It is in the film criticism world right now, especially in social media. When I hear someone go directly to a comparison, that's like the most low-hanging fruit for a freaking review that there is. If you can't go in and talk about a movie without either just doing a plot recap or comparing it to something else that you liked or don't like, then you're not really doing justice to the movie, whether you liked it or not. When I see that on social media, the first thing I do is swipe because I know that you don't have enough of a sense of what you thought about the movie to be able to do it any other way. And I think you're right. I think those comparisons hurt the movie, one, because of the comparisons, and two, because it's spoilery.
Yeah.
Oh, this is like Silence of the Lambs. Well, you just spoiled the movie. You just spoiled what people were supposed to go in and experience cold, you know? And it really, that's triggering for me when I see that online because I'm like, try a little harder, please. Try a little harder.
I feel that 100% because when I see the reviews, it's a lot of immediate trash, garbage, and there's nothing there left. I'm like, can you explain why it was garbage? It wasn't scary. Okay, but why wasn't it scary? Like, did you just? I feel like a lot of people go into horror movies trying to compare it to their favorites. Like, I'm a Scream fan. I love slasher movies, but I'm not going to go into something like Longlegs expecting the same type of movie because I know there's so many different genres and subgenres. So even the marketing that I saw with Longlegs, I thought it looked great. I had really no idea what I was going to expect when I watched it. But then watching it kind of changed my point of view of what I was expecting. But I was still hanging on because I'm like, oh, I'm not on the route that I thought I was, but I'm still here to like finish the race and see where it's going to go from there, which is why I liked it a lot. But I agree, it's a lot of just negativity with no like basis on, in comparison too of like Silence of the Lambs, the Zodiac, things like that. And I'm like, well, it's a line there, but it's not exactly what that's supposed to be.
Dan, I'm seeing you shaking your head like, well, what are you?
No, I'm agreeing.
Okay.
Those are positive shakes, but I just it like genuinely does frustrate me because whether it's a positive or negative reaction, like we should be able to critique something or analyze something in a vacuum, like free of any other comparisons, especially when like the comparisons just they're not really there. Like if that's what you're taking away, like you're literally taking like she's an FBI agent, like so it's Silence of the Lambs. Like what are you doing? Like
Yeah.
I don't understand. I don't want to go off on a tangent about that, but it's almost like, and it's also a movie that I think was framed, and Oz has talked about this, to mimic those types of movies. Like it's pretending to be that, but it's not. He talked about how he kind of like the framing of like Silence of the Lambs, like that inspiration is like very surface level, and he's aware of that, but he's like, that's just kind of the framework of the house, and then I leave it there. Like it's just to get people in, and then we're moving on.
To me, when you start talking, if we're really going to talk about comparisons, for me, and this may be a weird take too, but I would lean more toward Skinamarink than I would Silence of the Lambs. This movie's trying to do something a little bit more thoughtful, and whether it fully executes that or not is a debate to have. But it's not just, oh, we're doing another Zodiac. That's not what we're doing here. It's those components are there to drive us forward narratively, but that's not what the movie is.
And see, my comparison was kind of far out because I got a lot of Zodiac and Silence of the Lambs. But for me personally, when I watched it, I don't know why, but I got a sense of like the Cell in the way that it was like a serial killer's mind and it was kind of a little bit darker. I don't know how my mind went there first. And I was like, okay, I kind of see those little comparisons, but that's why, I don't know.
Have you guys seen Cure from Kiyoshi Kurosawa?
I love it. I love it.
I've heard some people say like go as far as to be like portions of it are ripped off in this. Do you have any thoughts on it? I have not watched it yet. I've been meaning to since I've been hearing that, but do you have thoughts there?
I don't see that because I think if you go and watch Cure, you'll see bits of Seven, you'll see bits of, I mean, it is a movie to be ripped off. It is a movie that will inspire. I see bits of Cure in a lot of movies. I don't, it's not something that came to my mind.
For me personally, like really just briefly, the way I look at it is that like I like honesty. Like I like directors to talk about their influences and acknowledge them. Like I just made a video about how like Emerald Fennell just took Talent to Mr. Ripley and just redid it in a modern way. And then they asked her about it point blank in an interview. She says, "Oh no, that wasn't on my mind." It's just like, when you lie, you're lying. When you lie, like, I have no respect, and like, that's a whole other conversation. But to me, it's just like, it's the honesty about it, right? Like, we all have influences in every single thing we do. Like, you know what I mean? But just be honest.
Saltburn to me is something that was so overhyped because it literally was in so many ways a beat for beat ripoff, but it wasn't taking ownership of that. Like when you look at Kill Bill, Quentin Tarantino's not pretending. He's like, listen, not only do I want to tell you that I ripped off these movies, I want you to go watch these movies because they're great. You know, that's the difference. And if you do it, like you said, if you do it honestly, I'm here for it.
So, scariest movie of the year. Do we agree with that? Or
No. I can say I liked it, but like that was the only disappointment where I was kind of like, oh, I didn't really walk out satisfied because I didn't really get. I mean, there was one part where I was like, I kind of jumped just because of the sound and it was like in your face, but I didn't see why it got so many scariest movie, traumatizing, and that's where it kind of like dropped a little bit in my score. But I liked it for what it was, but I didn't see where they got. I feel like that was where the hype kind of came in of like, it's terrifying, it's scary, and then everyone's getting hyped up, and then you watch it and they're waiting to be scared, and then they get disappointed, and then that's where it starts to kind of like get muddled in the ratings and stuff from 100 to like what 80, 90 right now. But yeah, I just didn't really get that terrifying vibe. I got very suspenseful and like, a little triggering, but I didn't get like terrified or scared from it personally.
I will say this. I actually never saw a single trailer for the movie. I was out of the country for, 45 plus days leading up to the release of this film. And the only thing that I did see was the teaser trailer with the picture of the family where the dad is on the phone, I think, to 911. And he's saying, "It's not my daughter. It like this is my daughter, but it doesn't look like her," or something like that. That was the only thing that I saw before I saw this movie. And that little bit alone was enough for me to go, I want to see this. I have no idea what it's about. I have no idea who stars in it. I didn't learn that it was Nick Cage in the movie until I was walking into the theater and I saw the poster where it said Nick Cage. I was like, oh shit, we got Nicolas Cage. Dan, I'm a big fan of Nicolas Cage too. So, I'm with him like 99% of the time, and every now and then he just goes a little too Nick Cage for me. But I was with this, and I go into this movie with zero expectations. And I knew within the first 20 minutes, I'll be honest, I knew when the credits came up after he makes his little appearance and then the music just kicks in super loud, right? And at that moment, I said to myself, I'm like, I'm probably not going to enjoy this as much as I thought I would. I just instantly knew that there was something of this movie that it's already doing something to just kind of like, annoy me a little bit. And I'm very particular with movies, but I'm also very forgiving with a lot of movies because I'll be the first to admit I own a shit ton of Michael Bay movies. I love a lot of Michael Bay, but I also love some real, really beautiful filmmaking. I appreciate, all extremes of it. I can have fun with a little Shia LaBeouf for 90 minutes running around like a complete moron, running his mouth half the time. I don't care. Whatever. It's funny to me. However, with this movie, I found myself throughout the entire experience kind of back and forth. There was like this internal battle going on where I was like, oh, I really like that. Oh, that's very creepy. Oh, what the fuck are they doing? Like there was just moments where I couldn't 100% give. And the moment that I'd kind of relax, they would do something that just kind of would annoy. And I left the theater. I said to myself, I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I'm going to sit on it. And I remember my initial score was a 3.5 out of 5. I was like, you know what? 3.5 out of 5 isn't a bad score for a movie. Anything below 3, I'm like, okay, start questioning it. But the more that I thought about it leading up to this conversation today, I went down on my half and it's now just a 3. And I realized my biggest problem with this movie is what I've had with a lot of other films that have come out recently. And it's not even so much the movie anymore. It's the conversation around the movie. It's the social media aspect of it. When I scroll and it's like these clickbaiting TikTokers, this is the scariest movie I've ever seen, guys. Oh my God. And it's that. And it's like, can we just all agree that it wasn't like incredible? Like I've never seen anything like this before, and admit that it's good. but it's we're exaggerating it just a bit. I don't know who's paying you to say all that. There was moments with Nick Cage, for me personally, again, this is my opinions, where I loved some of the like more subtleness that he had with the character Longlegs. And then the moment that he would go into Castor Troy, Nick Cage, from Face Off, die, die, and all of that. And I was like, dude, like, come on. Like, there's a moment where there's a little bit less is more, Nick.
Yeah.
You could hear when he starts singing, ready for the big ride, baby. Like all of these things. I'm like, Jesus Christ, I couldn't help it. It just took me out. It took me out. And then what I've been finding a lot too is with characters as of recently, I feel like a lot of characters are not interesting enough. They're not well-written characters enough for me to care and be invested in. Some of these movies that I've seen, especially within the horror genre, they're just not doing it for me. To kind of get off track a little bit, but Stop Motion was a movie that I was very excited about. And I thought on a visual aspect, the movie was incredible, but I just felt that the character, I could give two shits about her. And,
I'm happy to hear you say that because I feel like I was dying on that hill because the movie didn't do it for me.
No, it
I was bored most of the time with the
Yeah.
movie. It just wasn't engaged with the characters in it. When we talk about the scariest thing of all time or the funniest thing of all time, this is very personal. This is a lot more personal than the biggest action of all time or whatever. But I think this movie is interesting because the type of scary that it is either really going to work for you or it's just not going to work at all. And for me, it felt so fresh because I see everything. I'm trying to see 150 movies in the theater this year. I've seen everything. And Blumhouse has really done a great job of destroying media literacy when it comes to horror because the formulas are the same. Everything looks the same. And people's idea of what is scary, quote, scary, is really what I call startle vision. You can startle me all day long with a loud pop and a gong or something. But is that really scary? No. To me, that's not scary. I get scared if you can build tension and uneasiness. And when people say that this is the scariest movie of the year, I think they're in that headspace because what this movie does so well through nearly 90% of its runtime is it doubles up like a fist on you with the sound mix and the visuals. There's a very precise visual language to this movie. The subtlety of what's happening in the background that you might not even see on your first viewing of the movie. Those things worked. I was in the movie with my producing partner. We do filmmaking together, and we both came out of it uneasy. And that's something that probably hasn't happened to me in at least 10, 15 years, maybe since Climax, a Gaspar Noé film, kind of worked on me that way. That movie almost made me throw up, side note, which has never happened to me before in my life. But that if that works on you and that sort of fear building works on you, then all of a sudden Nicolas Cage's performance becomes way more interesting because it's such a contrast to the vibe of the movie that it makes it even more uneasy. Like, I get that you guys found his performance in there kind of funny in places, but if you're really invested in that aura of uneasiness, and then this weird bastard is doing all this stuff, you don't know what he's going to do next. And that actually, for me, really worked. And I loved it so much for that because I'm so jaded and so desensitized. Stuff doesn't work on me like that normally.
It's funny you mentioned the whole desensitized bit because after I left the theater, I asked myself genuinely, I'm like, am I just that far gone that this didn't affect me in any way? I'm a father of two girls, right? So I'm watching this movie and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, holy shit, like, my daughter's birthday was originally supposed to be February 14th. Well, it's not, but what if, like, I put myself in these positions, right? And you watch it on a much different set of eyes when it's that much closer to home. Doesn't take away from the experience if you don't have kids, but it's just a very, I try to make it even more personalized. And I just found nothing about it that really made me like shake to my core. And I think it was, in part, like starting to break it apart a little bit here. I think it was part of the writing, part of where the story went and the little cracks within the story that just didn't make sense. That really just kind of had me scratching my head, wanting more. Again, I think the things I really loved about it, the visuals, the tone, and just little things here and there that I start picking apart, because it's not a perfect movie by any means, as a lot of people are making this movie out to be. And again, I want to know what payroll you're on, because I'd like to be on that as well. I'll say it all day. But the reality is, like, I think that's where the score starts to get hurt. And then obviously that article comes out where, you know, he talks about the one that I was mentioned to you, Dan, where, and I think you made the video on that as well, where he's basically is throwing shade at these other movies. And I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, do you not know your own audience at this point?
You got to separate yourself from that, because how many asinine things has Quentin Tarantino said in the public, but his movies are still there. He's still got 5 out of 5s,
Yeah.
you know, or James Cameron, you know, one of the most egotistical filmmakers in cinematic history. It is a struggle, but I think it's important to try and separate.
But Oz Perkins isn't James Cameron or
Yeah.
Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
That's the
Well, no, but I'm saying point is you got to step away from that as best as you can, unless you're Eli Roth and saying something dangerous, then it becomes important. But if you're just being an egotistical asshole, well, I mean, that's Hollywood.
I think for me it's an issue of, like, when you're speaking on, like, the whatever the art form is itself, like, does the quality of your work back up your level of narcissism? Like, that's what I am looking for. And I feel like it was just strange. It just rubbed me the wrong way. And I've because I felt that way, I've listened to him talk more, and I've like tried to see if I was off base. And the more I listen to him talk, the less I kind of like him. So it's definitely, you know, it was an interesting interview. I also wanted to ask you guys, do you think you can decide with a movie like this how you're going to feel about it before you even go in? I feel like some people potentially either had the mindset of, oh, I'm going to love this, or hate. I've seen some people bash this in a way too that's like too much, and I've seen it get praised in a way that's too much, and I'm like, I feel like you decided before you watched this how you were going to feel, and it's just a little, I don't know.
When you guys talked about, like, the being desensitized, and I think that's a big thing, because we're all horror creators. There's a huge horror community that's definitely building up, like, it's getting bigger and bigger, and I think we are overcritical. And I've talked to my fiance about this, because we'll go into certain movies and just be like, it was just not very good. And I'm like, wait, pump the brakes, because I feel like I'm over analyzing so much and not enjoying what I'm watching. So now I feel like I have to go into these movies just kind of like, even though I don't really like, let's see, Imaginary or, like, you know, Night House. Great plots. I think the whole entire story was like a really good concept, but the execution was just garbage. Like, it just didn't go anywhere. But I'm like, you had like the best blueprint and building blocks to give us something great, but you didn't go anywhere with that. And with, like, Longlegs, I felt like a lot of people were kind of subjectively, like, feeding into that overhype of, like, oh, it is going to be scary, so I'm going to keep talking about of how scary and crazy it was. But then you have other people who went in seeing it and kind of were like, they missed certain points or didn't get the, like, subliminal messages, or they didn't really read into it. They were expecting to take everything with, like, face front value of, like, this is what you're getting, this is what you're going to get. And they didn't really read off of that. So I feel like a lot of opinions were changed. But I think the entire horror movie community is like, everything is subjective. I can't tell you that Scream is better than Terrifier, or that, you know, that is better than, you know, a found footage movie. There are different categories for different reasons. But then a lot of people are going into it being like, this is what I like. So if the movie is not similar to that, I'm not going to like it. And it's like, but you're missing something, because you're watching it with these eyes instead of, you know, taking it for what it is. And it could be a great story, or, you know, something really new to you, like a new experience that you haven't experienced yet, but you're not opening yourself up to, like, enjoying that. And I feel like that's really common right now with all these movies coming out, like, you know, Longlegs, and it's just crazy.
It's interesting because both of you guys are leaning into something that's bothering me. Is it used to be when we had an expectation for something and we went into it and were surprised that it wasn't that they were able to shock us, that was a good thing. But subverting our expectations now automatically gets bad reviews from a lot of people. A lot of especially social media critics went in expecting this to be some, you know, disturbing, you know, rip your face off horror movie. And when they didn't get that, they got something different because the marketing was clever.
Yeah.
It automatically dinged it points because it wasn't what they thought it was going to be. And it's happened twice in a row, because there are a lot of things that you can say that are problematic about Maxine, but to be mad that it wasn't an 80s style slasher, to me, is nonsense, That's telling the director what he's supposed to do, and he made the movie he wanted to make, for better or for worse. And it happened with that one, and then right after that, Longlegs. People thought it was going to be this, and since it wasn't this, then it's got to be a 2.5 out of 5. And that's, to me, it's crazy, because I love it when I get shocked. I didn't know that what we got in Longlegs was going to be that, but I was really surprised and happy that I didn't have it, all figured out.
Yeah, I wish I loved this movie. And I really do genuinely wish that I never pay for a movie to hope that it's bad in any way. Like, that's my hard-earned dollar. I want to be, I want to escape for those 2 hours. I want to forget the fucking world and just enjoy what I have and come out and be like, that movie was fucking awesome. It's got a place in my collection. That's just it for me. And I had zero expectations with this one. So there's clearly something wrong with me, because I want to love it. I don't, but I don't hate it either. So it's just this weird place where I'm like, yeah, it was good.
Do you feel like you completely understood the story, or you just didn't like?
I did.
You did? Okay.
Yeah, like I did. I got it. And that's the other part about it that has me kind of triggered, I guess, if you will. It's like, it wasn't this elaborate thing. Like, it was obvious. I thought that it was obvious that she had a connection to him in the very beginning of the movie. I thought it was obvious that it was going to end at her boss's daughter's birthday party. And like, all of these things that people are going, oh my God, it's like a novela, Ay, Dios mío. Like, what are we talking about? Let's not exaggerate this, guys.
It was like foreshadowing.
They're making it, and I think as I'm talking and I'm hearing myself, spew these words, I'm hearing myself and I'm like, I don't think the problem is so much with the movie. I think my problem is with the people that saw the movie that are praising it to be something so much more. They are making this movie out to be like the smartest, fucking most elaborate thing that they've ever seen. And I'm like, have you not seen movies? There's just so many more out there. You mentioned The Cell. I fucking love The Cell. The Cell gets shit on all the time just because of J-Lo. For its time, even now, what a fucking incredible movie. Like, way ahead of its time. Disturbing, emotional, the characters well fleshed, all of it great. Movies like Silence of the Lambs or Seven, I felt like this was a movie that was trying to aesthetically be kind of like a David Fincher type film, mixed in with some A24-ness to put it into a category that we can call it, what's that new term that we use?
Elevated horror.
Elevated horror. Thank you. I felt like it was like, this is where we want this movie to be. This is our audience. So let's throw that in there, because they're going to eat the shit out. They're going to fucking love this. Right.
Yeah.
And let's throw some other little things here and there, little tropes, and, call it a day. It works. I like some of my elevated horror movies. I didn't like Skinamarink. I'm not a fan of watching paint dry. That's just my opinion. But some people fucking love that movie.
Yeah.
I'll never understand it.
You're missing out.
Like, yeah, apparently I thought, when I saw Skinamarink, I was like, man, that would be a great fucking short. Like, if it was a 25 minute story, that's some creepy ass shit. But an hour and a half of like, did you see that toilet? It disappeared. Like, wow, this is fucking captivating stuff. And sometimes I just feel like it's so fucking pretentious. And like, us as like, I don't even consider myself a critic. I don't do reviews. If you guys go to my page, I don't ever do reviews, because my opinion is worth shit. Like, I'll recommend movies, but I don't do reviews. Like, I'm not gonna be like, this movie was good, this movie was bad, you see? No, I'll just flat out be like, I enjoy this movie, you should watch it. If you didn't, okay, that's fine.
Well, maybe it's a movie that you put aside for a few years, let the voices settle, and then give it a revisit. You probably still won't love it, but you might like it better.
I did that with The Village. 20 years later, or 20 something years later, I never saw it from its original theatrical release. Because I was one of those pissed off young kids that was promised a movie about monsters. I fucking saw the trailer. It was a monster movie. And, I was in high school. My hormones were all over the place. I'm fucking going to see a monster movie. And instead I get a love story about family and like what you would do for your kids, and this beautiful love story for that matter. But I was pissed off. I couldn't see past my own whatever was going on in my head. And then I saw it years later.
We both revisited it at the same time.
Did you like it?
I liked it less on my
Less?
rewatch.
I
Yeah,
loved it.
yeah.
I bought it the
It
next
went
day.
from a 2.5 out of 5 to a 1.5 out of 5 after the revisit. I'm like, this
Interesting.
movie's shit. I hate it.
I know Dan loves M. Night. He's like his number one fan.
We're talking about this. I had a video, and I was talking to OTS about this. I have a video about Old and how much I fucking despise that movie. But a lot of the there's a lot of parallels there in terms of how I think about it. I like Longlegs better than Old because I don't think Longlegs really is taking itself seriously, and that's what saved it for me. I think it was very tongue in cheek. Even ending on the Hail Satan, like they're having fun. I like that. If this was self serious, and with this quality of story, I really would have fucking hated it. But then I'm knee deep in arguments about Old with people and what's funny is half of them tell me I'm wrong because Old is this like thoughtful masterpiece with all the shit to say, and half of them are like, no, it's a shit post. It's funny, and it's like you people are literally explaining my problem with the movie is that it has no fucking idea what it wants to be. M. Night was not trying to make a funny movie. You listen to him talk about it. He was making a serious movie about his own issues with getting older, with watching his kids grow up, with watching his parents get older. It's a serious movie. He can't fucking write dialogue. It's not trying to be funny. He can't write. He doesn't know how people talk. And I don't think Oz Perkins writes good dialogue either. And the reason it bothers me in movies like this is when you do I can praise Longlegs on its sound design, right? Like I love how quiet it is. I love how every sound is amplified. And from the opening scene, that's the best, maybe the best scene in the movie. I loved it so much, and it snaps the audience's attention onto the story. And then they keep working with that, like with how quiet it is and just letting it sit. That's great. When you say some dumbass shit that is like non-human in your diet, I'm like, oh, I'm watching a movie again, and I hate that. And that's what just kept kind of pulling me out. And Maika Monroe is getting a lot of praise. The performance to me is like so forcibly awkward. And I've heard people say maybe she's supposed to be like neurodivergent or something like that, and I understand that, but if that in no way is part of the story and not actually implied outside of the performance, it's just an awkward, weird, clunky performance to me. I don't like it very much. I think it really picks up in the last half hour. I think she's excellent, but a lot of it up until then, I'm just like, this is just kind of holding the movie back for me and pulling me out. So I don't know. It's a strange movie, but I don't think he writes good dialogue, and I think it's painful.
See, for me, her character, especially on second viewing, I'll say this, like it really settled out for me on second viewing because yeah, she is very, very awkward. And someone asked me like, how is she even able to be an FBI agent when she feels like she's about to explode every time she pulls her weapon out? And my feeling is, and this is one of the little things I think should have been better developed in the story, is because of the ability that she has, things are coming to light in her that hadn't come to light before. I don't know that this character was like that 6 months before the movie started. This is a pressure that's getting heavier and heavier on her as she progresses, and it's only when she's screaming in the car, the same as Nicolas Cage's character is screaming in the car, that things are really coming together for her. And I do think that's why she's at her best in the last half hour. That's the feeling that I get. Should it have been better defined in the movie? Yes, but that's just the way it felt to me.
Her character,
And I think
actually, her being the way that she is, was one of the reasons that for me, I stuck with the film. Like I thought that there was a quality to her that was kind of endearing in a weird sort of way. Like even just the little things that she would do with her mouth, and she would kind of the scene where she's sitting down next to her boss's daughter, just in the room, and the awkwardness of that, and how she's.
Why did that give me like Edward Scissorhand vibes?
Yeah,
though, she
it
was
did.
With my daughter. I was like, he seems a little awkward. Like this is the first human interaction.
Yeah, like she's just sitting there, like, yeah, like she's like not human, trying to figure out how humans are, kind of thing. Like,
yeah,
and I love that. I thought that was so interesting, but at the same time, I'm thinking about how the hell did she get into the FBI? She's like this. Like, how did she? There's a lot of questions that you start raising. It's like almost to your point, Stephen, where it's like, okay, is it because there's something as she's getting closer to this case that has caused her to kind of revert back to this, you know, like closed-mindedness, or just like having the veil like come back or something, because she doesn't remember anything, but she has this psychic ability that's so powerful, yet she let her partner walk to basically his death in the very beginning.
Well, but that's set up. Like they even say, you know, she scored properly 8 times on the test, and her response was, "I failed it 8 times too." It's not a perfect science. I think that was enough to sort of set that up. And I think the tautness of the movie is part of what defines why she's the way she is, and it's continually getting worse until the break happens. For me, character-wise, I liked her character, and I thought she was great. I've seen her, people have loved on her so much for other movies, and she's doing these really low budget, kind of not great movies, but she's good in them. I thought this was the moment where she actually did something really cool. I liked her a lot.
And I feel like her character wasn't my favorite of what I've seen, but for the movie that it was, I felt like it fit perfectly, because everything like that was around her kind of just like meshed all, like, I don't know, because I was like, is she autistic on the spectrum? I'm getting something like where she's not really understanding like human interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole psychic thing kind of plays in, and I'm like, oh, okay. Then you see her kind of change a little bit, and I'm like, oh, okay, I see where we're going with this now. It's not her, it's like this evil thing that's kind of like, you know, inside her. But like you were saying, Dan, about the whole like the imagery and everything like that, I feel like this movie, with her acting, you can find things that you don't like, but there were a lot of things that were really like a moth to a flame, like the way the screen kind of just went red and then shortened out, and I was like, oh, we're in this, it's kind of happening. And then just like the visuals and the sound, and like there were things where I was just like, they feel like they don't go together, but the way that they were kind of pieced kind of worked. Like Nicolas Cage as a serial killer, I'm not a huge fan, I'm sorry, but I was really into his character, and I was like, okay, I think I fuck with Nicolas Cage now. I like this, he's really good. Like I didn't see him on screen, I didn't see him play a character. I was just like, oh shit, he changed my mind with this movie. I like that. I'm gonna continue to see where this goes. And then it just kind of went everywhere. But yeah, no, that her character, I was just like, is she not? How is she, like, you know, how does she get in the FBI if she can't really complete sentences and things like that?
If you want to compare her to Clarice, like Silence of the Lambs works because Clarice, it's like a character study. Like that's what it is. It's of her. It's not about Anthony Hopkins. It's about Jodie Foster, and that's why the performance is so good, and that's why, like, it's why the movie is terrifying and why he's terrifying, and like everything about it, because you're invested in her. And I feel like she keeps the audience like, and even the way she's shot, like it's very, you're always kind of far away with her kind of in the center of the screen very often. It's very like you can't quite get to her, and I think that improves throughout the course of the movie as she kind of unravels. But it's like so detached. Like, to feel fear, I need to connect with the characters, and this is why like I have problems with a lot of horror movies, is when there's badly written characters, and I don't care about you. I don't care that you're dying. I don't care that you're running. I don't care that you're afraid. Yeah. But when I do care, that's when I'll feel something, and that's when I'll get invested. And like that's why I am pickier in the genre, and like I don't just enjoy anything, because if I don't feel what the character is supposed to be feeling, I don't fucking care at all. Like I'm sorry.
There are a couple of, one in particular exposition piece in this movie that I really don't like, but I cut it a lot of slack because I had to watch Imaginary. I had to watch the damn swimming pool movie. I had to watch Tarot. When someone says this is the scariest movie of the year so far, it's not that big of a stretch as you think, because you look at those movies and they're awful. They're really, like, I'm talking 1-star, half-star movies. And then this one comes along and it's flawed, but damn, it's really doing something that's not part of that Hollywood formula of what a horror movie is supposed to be.
If you've been having shit for food for like the first 3 days of the week, and then Thursday comes along and you have like, you asked for medium rare, but you got like well done on your steak, you're like, oh, thank God, because it's not shit. Does it make this movie then that good? Or is it just because you've literally been fed shit for the last 3 days? You know, like that's the other thing. It's like, how much do we have now, you know, that comes out that's actually really good, where we don't, we're not as lenient with a movie like Longlegs, right? I feel like that is another big issue with just the genre in general. It's like we get a lot more shit than we do good stuff. And I'm sorry, Steven, you had to subject yourself to fucking the whatever pool,
Night
tarot,
whatever.
imaginary. Those are
Amityville
movies
Horror in the
that I-
water.
yeah, those are movies that I
God.
avoid.
Fucking Strangers, Chapter 1.
Like,
Oh,
I thank God I don't have to see those, and I know enough when I see the trailer. I'm like, yeah, I'm never seeing that. I guess that also plays a big part in it, where I'm seeing movies that I'm purposely seeking out because I think they're going to be really good. So I guess in a way I keep them at a higher standard or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I'll probably enjoy shit more if I'm eating more shit. Is this a movie that should be mentioned with Silence of the Lambs? Like, is this a movie that is even in the same playing field conversation wise?
No, I don't think so.
I don't. I can see the similarities of like the, I guess, style of it, very minimal. But when people talk about the comparisons, I don't. They're detectives. That's the only comparison I really kind of see.
I think that's hyperbolic. And no, those are two movies that shouldn't even be in the conversation together. And one, I've already told you how I feel about comparisons as a tool for discussion anyway, most of the time. But people that are doing that are just being hyperbolic, because even if you think Longlegs is a 5 out of 5, did it have the acting that you got from Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster? Did it have the level of directing and the same level of score? And did Silence of the Lambs is peak cinema for any decade. So no, there's no way. This movie, Longlegs, if you're going to start comparing, should be in that mid to low budget horror movie discussion. And if you put it in that discussion in its proper place and stop worrying about the fact that there's FBI agents looking for a killer, then it becomes top tier in the area that it's existing. Instead of trying to put it with a freaking Oscar-winning horror movie or thriller, which is just something we don't get.
Yeah, I saw some guy, I don't know who it was, but they were saying how, it's time to give this the award that it deserves. I don't even know who it was, but basically just saying that this needs to be nominated for an Oscar, and talking about
Best Picture.
Yeah, and Nick Cage being, getting Best Actor. I love Nick Cage, man, but
I do too.
fuck.
This ain't it.
It's
Nick
not
Cage.
enough of a performance. Like, that's what I said about, like, everyone earlier in the year. Like, I love Dune, but everyone was talking about Fade Ralph, like, as an all-time villain. I'm like, the dude was on the screen for 10 minutes doing one thing. He was just being weird, and he could fight, and that's it. It's not. It doesn't have to be an all-time villain to say, man, that was cool. That was a great character design. That was like, something could be cool, and it doesn't have to be the fucking best thing you've ever seen in your life. Like, everything is hyperbole, and I made a video about that. I was just like, it's cool. That's it. You're not going to think about that in 10 years. Like,
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm not going to be going back to this movie in 10 years. It's not very story detail focused. It's more on the feeling, I think, of the movie, in my opinion. So I think something like Silence of the Lambs, you can go back and rewatch and pick things up, and it's an investigation. This, like, I don't know how many viewings it'll survive, honestly, for me.
I think it's a very specific like niche, because like I know it wasn't like the best written movie. Like, it was fun to watch, but I liked it because of the elements that it gave me. Like, I liked the satanic stories. I liked that it was oddly campy, where people were laughing in theater, but it was like appropriate. I like Nicolas Cage being this weird, like everything that's being shared is all Nicolas Cage as Longlegs. So I kind of like that it became this weird, like, it's cult classic, I would say, for like 2024. But when, like, I've only seen it once, I've settled in. It's a great movie, but when I look back on it, I'm like, I'm not going to watch this anytime soon, but I did like what it gave us. Like, for being, like you said, with all these horrible movies to start with at the beginning of the year, it was a nice take to be like, okay, at least it was something that was very hyped. It was well made, I guess. It has these like characters that we didn't really see coming, like Nicolas Cage being a serial killer and Maika Monroe being Edward Scissorhands' personality. But it was just kind of fun, like how it kind of turned out into this weird, like, pop culture now, because there's there's vinyls and it's like all this stuff, and I'm like, I think they just really killed it with the marketing that just made it explode to where we didn't really see it happening like that.
So I'll be the one that says I will buy this 4K, and I probably will revisit it. But to call it a cult classic is exactly the proper term for it, because it'll be fun to revisit with friends and have cocktails, because Nicolas Cage creates a really fun villain to watch. The atmospheric nature of the film, it's just so vibey. You can crank it up on a big screen and have fun with it. But
Yeah.
I will definitely be revisiting this movie. Now I've seen it twice already. The second viewing was really to sort of really put my mind in the right spot for this discussion tonight. But I'm happy I saw it twice, and that just confirmed that it is not. It's not the best horror movie of all time. It's nonsense, but it's fun.
Yeah.
It's more fun than Rosemary's Baby, a better movie, but it's more fun. So
Yeah.
I will watch it again for Nicolas Cage's performance and those vibes and all
Yeah.
that stuff.
I will revisit it as well. But instead of going to the theaters, I will actually purchase it because I'm like, if I'm going to spend the $15, I'll just buy it.
Exactly.
And own it and watch it. And after hearing you and Steven and Jesse kind of describe it as fun, I think that's the part that I feel like I've missed because I took it serious. Like, this is somebody who's killing families, and I'm not seeing the,
Yeah.
Well,
hey,
it's not a
murder
goofy
the
laughing kind of
fams.
movie. It's
Right,
not that.
But that's again kind of going back to like my issues that like I don't know if this movie knows what the fuck it wants to be half the time.
I disagree with that because even Dan said it at the beginning that the movie doesn't take itself seriously.
So I feel like it's in a lot of times it's in little things like her boss, like Blair Underwood's really good in this movie as the agent. His name Carter. Is that right? Carter. I thought he's kind of like a bumbling idiot and he's kind of an asshole. And I feel like it was really funny in the entirety of the performance. And like even the fucking picture of Bill Clinton on his wall, like that being on the screen was hilarious to me. And little things like that, I'm just like, this isn't quite taking itself that seriously. Obviously there were serious elements, but I feel like a lot of the serious elements were like this kind of things that were like plucked out of other movies. They were like, okay, let's have like, some nuns and this and that, just like vague horror imagery, just kind of like keep the story going. But like the big part of the story really is, and like the way this movie tries to hit a home run, I think, is with Nick. And like it is a silly performance, and I've seen. And again, I have problems with the movie, but I've seen some people critique it being like, oh, everyone was laughing at it in the theater. Like, I think there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you can laugh and have fun and just, it's Nick Cage. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it isn't that serious. And like the investigation itself, it's very just kind of going through the motions. And like, she just kind of walks through it. And like, when you give your character like psychic powers, makes it a lot easier, I think. Which I thought was a little disappointing, but like that wasn't what the movie was trying to do, and I can also recognize that. So,
and I do think the idea, and we kind of touched on this already, but if the atmosphere is not working on you, then you will lean harder into the humor, and if that's the way if that's what you take from it, and you had a good time, then you had a good time. But if the atmosphere is working for you, and Nicolas Cage's performance is contrasting that, I mean, it worked for me. It worked for my audience. And here's the one thing that I took away from it too is 99% of the movies, and I've seen 76 movies this year in the theater so far. The vast majority of those, the movie's over, people walk out of the theater and walk away. This movie, both screenings, people were standing outside the door of the theater talking in the hallway. And that's amazing. And that's special. That says something about the movie.
Do you guys think there will be a sequel?
I think if anything, I would like a prequel, which I don't think will happen. But if anything happened, that's what I would like to see.
I hope they leave it alone.
And yeah, I hope that would be my hope as well. But if we get one or the other, I would prefer to see the before rather than the after.
Would it be called Short Arms? I'm just kidding. It's a bad joke.
One leg, peg leg.
Yeah.
When I walked out, it took me a while to kind of like dissect it and get a gist of like the whole satanic and the 13-1 being 14 and the birthdays and stuff. So I didn't really get that as soon as I was watching it. I kind of go home and be like, let it simmer. I read some reviews and I was like, oh, okay, I didn't really get that. All right. So I would like to know a little bit more of like how he and the whole satanic thing came to be with the dolls and stuff, because I think that was pretty interesting.
Yeah,
but to have a whole movie kind of explaining that would just kind of defeat the purpose, because I do like that it was kind of a mystery. Like even in the end, it wasn't really just resolved. It was like, well, evil's always going to be there. It kind of, can't really defeat it. So I kind of like that aspect of like, we don't know. Is there going to be a sequel or prequel? I feel like if they do, it's going to be just for like the money, because it did so well being overly marketed and, at such a huge, like, opening weekend kind of thing. But I don't see it really. I don't see her reprising her role. I don't see Nicolas Cage doing it. And if so, I mean, yeah, we know how that ended. But I mean, maybe like him younger if they were to do like a sequel.
Yeah.
But even then, how did he get so pale? How did that work? Like, I want to know.
I really love the John Carpenter style ending to this, the one that's just it's just so nihilistic. And to do a sequel, it'd be like doing a sequel to They Live. No one wants that. We love the way it ended. It's just so dark, you know? There's nothing can save us at the end of it. And I think that's fun and they should just leave it alone.
Because even as it ended, there were still like kind of jokes being put aside where he's like walking the wife to the kitchen. She's like, I'll be right back. And she's like, well, I will. And people were kind of laughing. And I'm like, I like that it didn't take a serious tone at the end. It still kind of kept those little campy moments that made it fun to watch. Where it was like, okay, like I see what this movie it is for, like what it is for now.
Well, I'm more referring to like the very end when she, can't shoot the doll and she's just standing there with tears running down her face.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a realization that, you can't beat hell.
Yeah, exactly.
Hell, Satan. Leave it be. Let that John Carpenter style ending say. We're good with it.
I definitely will revisit it. It didn't leave me hating the movie. I don't think I've hated something since Barbarians. Was it Barbarians with Justin Long?
Oh, you hated that one?
Oh, I fucking hated that movie. Now that movie I fucking hated. That movie pissed me off to no fucking end. Because I fucking loved the first 30 minutes of that movie. I thought that was some of the most tense 30 minutes I saw in a very long time. And as soon as Justin Long's character just pops up on the screen, I fucking love that kid. But as soon as he popped on singing in his fucking convertible, I was like, what the fuck is going on right now? Like, it just took a whole left turn to fuck youville. And, it just became this weird fucking titty milk shit that I'm just like, I'm not, what the fuck?
It took a turn.
It took a turn. It did. That's, yeah.
I didn't mind that, but I didn't think it stuck the landing was my problem. But I still generally like the movie. And as much as we're talking about, not the movie not taking itself seriously, it doesn't. But I do really think that the atmosphere and the building of tension in that movie really works for some people, and it just doesn't work for others, and that's totally fine. Most horror movies don't work for me. This one did, and that was cool.
Would you consider this horror then?
I think it's still a horror movie. Yeah.
See, I got more like psychological kind of thriller crime kind of thing, which wasn't bad, but I think the only horror aspect was it throwing the satanic thing into it that made it horror. And like that one, the inner where he's being interrogated scene was kind of like a little dark, but I didn't get like horror from it. I got like suspense.
I mean, I think the supernatural element tends to technically classify something as horror, but like it is so like kind of fleeting. Like it really is a thriller when you think about it, but like there are horror elements that you can't deny.
Got the gore. It's got the satanic stuff. It's got the supernatural abilities. It might be soft horror, but it's still horror.
I think the practical effects were awesome. We didn't talk about that, but I liked those a lot. I thought that was really cool. Even the scene where he's like going in on his head, like I thought that looked pretty good. I wanted to mention really quickly, he did talk about his influences for the movie. So the first thing, and humor is a recurring theme here. But he talked about The Omen being a big one, and he likes how it like brings that religious element, but it's kind of tongue in cheek, and it's kind of like it's not serious religious horror, but it is religious horror. He talked about modeling Nick Cage after Bob Dylan in Ronaldo and Clara, which is it's like a documentary that Bob Dylan directed about like his own career, and he has like the white face paint. And I think Nick Cage also referenced his own mom talking about that and how she used to put white stuff on her face, and he said he was very much like playing her in this, which is scary as fuck.
That is.
But and then also Andres Hiroshi was the cinematographer here. This is his first fucking movie.
It's pretty damn.
I thought he did a great job.
Yeah.
That was really impressive to me. But they talked about how from a cinematography perspective, Gus Van Sant kind of inspired them a lot, and he referred to My Own Private Idaho specifically. And then finally, A Woman Under the Influence, which I haven't seen. But in terms of like the dark humor and the kind of unhinged nature of that. But those were the 4 movies he kind of said that he pulled from.
Anything else you want to say before we finish up here? Jesse, you have any final words for Longlegs? And
for people who haven't seen it, definitely go into it with no comparison like we talked about like earlier. Like I feel like if you go that mindset of oh, people are comparing it to this, you're going to be let down if you're waiting for those things to happen. But yeah, I mean, just go into it just open minded. I think like I watch a lot of horror movies. I try and calm myself down when I'm like, oh, that's trash. So I'm like, wait, back up. You watch a lot. You're comparing a lot of things that you've already seen. So when something looks similar, I'm already in that mindset of just being like, well, they did it better in this movie. And I'm like, but it's supposed to be its own movie. Let it be what it's supposed to be. Wait till the end and then put it all together. So, movies like this, I'm like, it was a rough start to the year, but I think for what it is, we're getting good. There's good things coming. It's a great, summer release and the marketing top tier. So I think that really helped it get to where, it is right now.
All right, Steven, what about you?
Go in with no expectations, like you said, and go in to have a good time. I will say that it is a divisive movie. It's one you're either going to fall on the like side or the dislike side, and that's okay. And I think if you give it higher than a 3, you're still technically falling on the like side, to be honest. It's one of those movies that I will recommend to people, and if they come back and tell me they didn't like it, my response will be, I understand, even though I love it.
Dan, final thoughts?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, what I appreciated about it, even though I had plenty of problems with it, there was plenty to like. And I think the goal really is to have movies that we're able to have conversations like this about, right? Like that we can actually talk about. There's some kind of meat on the bones to like get at. And a lot, I don't like broad generalizations about everything is shit and the industry's all that. Like, I'm not saying that, but like a lot of movies are just kind of existing and there's not really anything to hate or love. So when a movie can pull out both those reactions in people, even if they're both exaggerated, I think to an extent, either way, I like that because it gets us talking. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, it's okay to appreciate something and also critique it. Like,
yes,
it doesn't have to be the best thing in the world. It doesn't have to be the worst. So
100%. And my final thoughts, Old was really good. I'm just kidding. Listen,
Watch Night Flip.
Hail Satan. No, in all seriousness, that's the biggest thing. It's like I feel like we are not allowed to critique something even though we do like it. And it's nice to be able to still appreciate something but also know that there are flaws, and this movie is flawed. Definitely is not a perfect film, but for anybody who enjoys a fun little, time with Nick Cage, this will be another one. This will be another one to add to his many Cage performances, that he's done along the way. Real fast, what's your most anticipated horror movie coming out from now till the end of the year that you're looking forward to?
Ooh, the one that we know of right now, Alien Romulus. I'm just waiting for Alien to have a really good comeback, but I heard of Daphne King is doing about the devil whistle. I forgot what it's called, Whistle or something.
I don't know.
Fuck. Okay, I have to remember it. But yeah, it's like that whistle that sounds like a crazy like death call, but it's an upcoming movie coming out later this year, so it sounds really good. So Alien Romulus in that one, if I can figure out what it's called, but I think it's still in production right now.
So Longlegs was my most anticipated horror movie of the year. So that's happened. But I think Cuckoo looks really interesting, and that's coming out in the next couple of weeks. And I'm conflicted about Heretic because I'm curious about the story, but I'm not a big Hugh Grant fan, so that's problematic. But those two are coming out, and Heretic's an A24, so that doesn't hold as much sway with me as it used to, but I'll still give it a go. Those are the ones I'm kind of looking at right now.
Heretic, I've been meaning to talk about that because that's the two kids, they're young guys that wrote Quiet Place, and they're back to write that, so I'm excited for that. The first one, just the first one. I'm excited for The Shrouds, which is the new Cronenberg movie that's coming this year. I haven't heard the best things, but I'm still excited. It's Vincent Cassel and Diane Kruger and Guy Pearce. So we'll see.
Heard about this.
But it's Nosferatu for me at the end of the year.
Very nice. Alien Romulus for me, and Cuckoo as well. Cuckoo's one that looks fun.
Yeah.
We'll definitely have fun with that. All right, guys. I do appreciate you guys being on here today and talking about Longlegs. I know that you probably have many things to do, but I appreciate you guys coming on. Please go ahead and check these gentlemen out on all their social media. I'll put them below and give them a follow. They're all great at what they do. I know, Steven, you're actually a filmmaker, and I actually have your film right back there. So
Oh, wow.
he's got
Awesome.
some movies check him out. Jesse, you pretty much talk all horror on your page from what I've seen. You do a couple other things as well, but it's mainly horror that you stick to, right?
Horror 2000s. I like, things that I grew up with, millennial, so anything that's relevant, but horror movies mostly.
Yeah. And Dan, Real Takes, if you haven't heard of this man, this guy is just, man, he's you either will love him or hate him, just like Longlegs. There's no in between.
Spiciest man on TikTok.
Man, when I tell you that I started following you very early on. I created my account. It'll be a year next month, and I mean you were with me in the low tiers. This man is just boosted up incredibly fast. Awesome work, dude. Like you. One of the most articulate people on the internet. That's for damn sure. Makes me go, just I'm not even gonna try. So check out all their content. It's great stuff. And again, you know who I am. Feel free to follow me on TikTok if you haven't already. Until next time, see you at the movies.